Okay, hi guys, and welcome to the show. Today, an absolutely chock-a-block full episode. I'll be reviewing the Invicta Pro Diver that I unboxed, I think it was a few weeks ago now. Also, I will be giving my first initial impressions of a new Timex. I think it's just been released very recently. And I've got to say, Timex, if you haven't had a look at their new watches, especially the archive military-inspired watches, they're really, really nice. Very tastefully done. Anyway, so I'll be sharing that with you. And I've also got a bit of a horology related book haul, stuff from eBay, gifts, that kind of thing. So I'll be taking a look at that in just a moment. Anyway, quick wristwatch check. I'm wearing the sub. I haven't worn it for a while. I've decided I'm going to put it back in rotation more often, especially actually after wearing the Invicta and the Explorer, the little 36mm Explorer. Putting back the sub, those two watches have given me a new admiration or new way of looking or appreciating the classic, well not classic, but the newer Submariner. Anyway, so that is my wristwatch check. Let's roll the intro and get into today's video. We'll start off with some books. Actually, these three were sent in by Saltzmans, who have become Oris certified dealers. And I mean, it's pure watch porn, really. Especially this one, this beautiful catalog for Oris. This is the Airtime, introducing the most innovative pilot's watch Oris has ever manufactured, the Big Crown Pro Pilot Altimeter. I mean, look at that. Ooh, it's gorgeous. I just wish it wasn't so massive, but oh, look at that. Oh, I mean, it's a dream, isn't it? I do like the what is this called? The Big Crown Kangaroo. Very Navi Timer-esque, but with its own little characteristics. I do love that watch. I tried one on in Barcelona a long time ago. Gorgeous. Anyway, shout out to Saltzmans. Thank you so much. Let's put that to one side. I've also got the Auris Handbook. I haven't actually opened this, so let's have a quick butcher's. Oh, the safety's on. There we go. Nice cover. Nice hardback cover. Let's have a look. Beautiful, absolutely stunning photography. Guys, if you want me to do a video having a closer look, maybe I should. Oh, look at this vintage advert. I just love stuff like this. Just love it. Beautiful book, absolutely stunning. I love Oris. Still independent, still Swiss quality. Fantastic design and innovation. I love Oris. I'm gonna get an Oris back in the collection. Quite like the Chrono Oris, you know, the 40mm older version with the little hints of orange. I do like that. And the last two are two books I managed to find on eBay. I scored for an absolute bargain. That'll be the thumbnail. This one was $5 and this one I think $3.50. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful books. They have everything from, you know, classic old English Tompion clocks to, oh, look at these incredible, incredible grandfather clocks. Really intricate, ornate. What is that? Oh, lovely Georgian period mantle clocks. Extremely ostentatious, you know, Louis XIV style, gold. If you know me, guys, you know I have an affinity for these beautiful ormolu. Bull, gilt, and tortoiseshell. You know, you can't get more classy than that. And what I love about this particular book, this is called The Connoisseur's Guide to Antique clocks and watches. It goes from, you know, oops, it's coming apart, sorry, let me just put that back in. It goes from, you know, the water clocks, the obelisks, the early time-telling devices of ancient Egypt, then of course sundials, all the way to, you know, look at this Art Deco period. Yeah, and then we have a classic Rolex chronograph in the 1940s, I believe. Stunning, absolutely stunning. This one is a little bit more, this is a history of clocks and watches as well. This is very detailed, a little bit dated. It only goes up to, I think the last, yeah, this ends with the early electronic devices. Oh, there's Big Ben, there you go. It is utterly fascinating, and actually this highlights a very important point. I often see you know, the word horology being bandied about, and guys, I think, you know, a lot of people have the wrong definitional idea of what that word means. What sparked this off in my mind thinking about this is, as actually when I did the unboxing of the Invicta, after I did a video on the Rolex Explorer, it was the, which one? I think it was my first impressions when I borrowed JCR's, Giancarlo's beautiful Explorer. And somebody commented, oh, it's good to see you back on the horological right track. Now, I'm sure they're joking, but it does raise quite an important point. And that is, people think that, you know, cheaper or more affordable watches are not horologically significant, and you know, time and time again I've made videos, quite a few, a series of videos. Look at the Casio F91W, a huge horological icon, you know, and that's $10. So price really doesn't come into it. Horology is not just watches. It goes back to the beginning of human civilization. The very first rudimentary time-telling devices were literally a stick in the sand with very basic sundial. I love clocks. I'm gonna start collecting clocks again soon. I already have quite a collection here and back home in the UK. And you know, I'll do some videos. No one's gonna watch them because obviously it's not as interesting to you guys as watches. I love horology. I love the history of it, and I think people do forget that. You know, if you want to talk horology, well, wristwatches are a very tiny part. You know, it's a bit like discussing human history and then only discussing the last century. To understand watches, to get a deeper appreciation of watches, you have to know a little bit about horology. You know, so I think there is a big kind of misconception about that word, horology, right? Perfect example is the other day I was reading in this about the origin or the etymology of the word o'clock. Why do we say, you know, it's 12 o'clock? Well, back in the medieval era, the early mechanical watches, well, not watches, they were clocks back then, you know, miniaturization hadn't started yet. You know, if you watch my history of horology, I did a long time ago. I'm going to do a part 2 soon, focusing more about the watches, but that was a part 1, and I'm meaning to do that. I said that I've got to do that. I will do that at some point. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So the early mechanical clocks were actually pioneered by monks because they used them to let people know when it was time to pray, when it was time to go to church, which is quite interesting. People would use the term o'clock as in it's the time according to a clock, not a sundial. So to differentiate, because the sundial obviously reads time differently. And over the ages, you know, of the clock became o'clock, and hence why we say o'clock. So this is just a prime example why understanding the history of horology is so relevant to watches. I mean, it's pretty obvious. If you want to talk about horology, you got to talk about, you know, well, for example, here we got right here, longitude. You know, the Harrison Marine chronometers, where the word chronometer came from. You know, so yeah, it's the roots of it. You can't call yourself a horologist and only talk about watches. If we look at the meaning of the word horology itself, it comes from the Latin, the measurement of hours. And actually somebody asked, well, if that's what horology means, if that's the definition of horology, is a fashion watch horology? Is a fake watch horology? And the answer is, well, unfortunately it is. It's not a very pleasant part of the history, but it is a part of that history. I mean, you look at the history of anything, how nations were founded or how empires were built, there's always a darker side to it, a less desirable, favorable, no, that's not the right word, less, there's always another side to the story, and unfortunately it is part of the story of horology. Anyway guys, I'm rambling now. I don't know why I'm talking about this, but I really wanted to highlight this point because I'm going to continue to cover all levels of it. You know, I am going to make some videos about my clock collecting. I'm going to get back into that. I am fascinated, especially by kind of the Art Deco era more stylistically, and of course the old, you know, the pendulum clocks. Even earlier than that, if you guys saw my EDC, I have a pendant my wife gave me, which is of the Aztec calendar, based on the one at the Zocalo in Mexico City. I actually got to see it in real life. I'll never forget that moment. Really awe-inspiring, huge 25-ton, you know, massive thing, and it's beautiful. But that is part of horology as well. From the water clocks of ancient Rome to, you know, the hourglasses used by Ferdinand Magellan, the Portuguese explorer, the invention of the pendulum, of course, by Galileo, the early astrological devices used in the Muslim world by astronomers, to the G-Shocks of the present day. It's a wonderful story. And I think there's always so much to learn. Anyway guys, without further ado, let's move on now to a review of the Invicta. So let's change perspectives and have a closer look. Today we are finally taking a look at a watch from Invicta. And this particular watch has been one of the most requested, if not the most requested watches for review. So of course I just had to do it, and fortunately enough they're very, very affordable. This cost me $89. No, yeah, it was 89 bucks, or was it 79 bucks? Well, thereabouts on Amazon. And we are of course talking about the Invicta Pro Diver. The reference is 89260B. This is quite a fascinating little watch, mainly because it's such a divisive one, but we'll get into all of that in just a moment. So let's get the basic specifications out of the way first, and then we can really get into the nitty-gritty of this timepiece. So the case is entirely stainless steel. We have an aluminium insert for the bezel. The bezel is of course quite impressively done, 120 click, unidirectional. So the glass on the front is mineral glass, and then on the back, for the display back, that is also mineral glass as well. We'll take a look at the back in a little while when we discuss the movement. So we have a screw down crown at the 3 o'clock, which I've got to say threads beautifully. The water resistance on this piece is a staggering 200 meters. The dial is everything you'd come to expect, very Submariner-esque, so to speak. We have trinite on the loom, beautifully applied. There is a staggering amount of attention to detail. Even the crown is signed. The applied logo and Invicta applied just below it as well. I really love the counterbalance on the seconds hand. It's a nice touch. Reminds me a bit like the Breitling logo. I got a thing for winged logos. We have the date displayed in a crisp white at 3 o'clock, and then a very simple minute track running around the outside. The hands are what you'd expect, the typical Mercedes hands, and then we have in capitalized text, automatic professional, 600 feet or 200 meters, water resistant. The inner bezel slopes down quite subtly, and then we have a mixture of high polish on the side, which is done impeccably well, Invicta engraved on the left, and then if you see at the top we have of course a brushed finish. The transition from brushed to high polish is done impeccably well. We have of course that sloped semi coin edge bezel that you'd come to expect, and of course the monochromatic color scheme. The only thing slightly breaking that, the yellowish tint of trinite luminescence. And actually, let's have a little lume shot right now so you can see it. It glows a nice green. Unfortunately, it's not the best lume in the world, but it is quite responsive. It just doesn't last that long. We have also a lume pip on the bezel at 12 o'clock. So let's get the dimensions out the way. So we have a diameter of 40 millimeters, a height of 13.5. Lug to lug is just a smidge, there we go, just a smidgen under 50 millimeters. And then of course the lug width, 20 millimeters. The size and scale of this piece is very reminiscent of, let's say, a 90s Submariner. The proportions are fantastic. This is, for me at least, and for most wrists, this is a great size for a diver. And I think that's a really good example of just why the Submariner design is imitated so much, because it's a winner. It's a winner. The case itself angles slightly downwards. In fact, actually, if we get my sub in there, you can see the similarities. Very, very similar, although the dial differs completely. Very nice crown guards, and the crown I think is a really great size as well. Quite solid feeling, even when unscrewed. Now, I must point out that this watch, if you saw the unboxing, comes on a bracelet, solid stainless steel bracelet. I was quite impressed to see the links are actually all solid, except for obviously the end links, which is a bit of a disappointment. But then again, at this price range, I mean, Seiko do it all the time, Citizen do it all the time. It's to be expected at the entry level. The clasp, however, is pretty solid. We've got micro adjustments there and a safety fold over. It's very, very standard. Nothing really to write home about, but again, it does the job very well. Now the bracelet does taper, but almost unnoticeable. It's just a smidgen thicker towards the, or wider I should say, towards the lug end. The links are of course held in by pins. We have polished on the center and then brushed on the flanking side links there. It's a true strap monster. There's nothing, no strap, whether it be rubber, a NATO, or you know, a crocodile or anything, it doesn't go with. But this is probably the most surprising thing about the Invicta, especially at its price range. Inside we have the Seiko movement. This is the caliber NH35A. It is of course automatic. It's 24 dual movement. It operates at 21,600 vibrations an hour. It does have the DeerShock shock system in it. The power reserve is about 41 hours, which is very reasonable. It has bidirectional winding on that rotor, and they've even added a custom rotor to it in that typical Invicta yellow. I think the addition of the display back is, well, quite surprising, especially at this price range. It is a screw-in case back. Also boasts, quite impressively, hand winding. So if you unscrew the crown, you can top it up. And of course, I think probably the most impressive of all is the fact if you pull the crown out all the way, it's hackable as well. You see the second hand stop. The NH35 is a hand-windable hacking upgrade from the caliber NH25, which preceded it. And I think it's worthy to note that this is one of the world's most popular automatic movements. Very popular with micro brands, of course, because it keeps costs down. But the added advantage is that you do get that Seiko reliability. It's basically an unbranded version of the caliber 4R36. Which you can find in some next generation monsters, for example. A wonderful, dependable Seiko movement, very economical to service. We also do have quickset, and what's quite nice compared to, let's say, the 7S26, the date at night only takes about an hour to change over, from about 11 to 12, just after midnight. It clicks over quite nicely. So how does it wear? Let's pop it on the wrist. And there we go. Now, as you can see on my small little wrist, it wears very, very well. It's a little bit taller compared to a typical sub, so it's got a little bit more presence. Also, the depth of the dial is a little bit deeper, and unfortunately the mineral glass doesn't have any kind of reflective coating, so you do get a little bit of light refracting and distorting compared to, let's say, a Submariner, even though the Submariner has no reflective coating either. It's just a slight, if you see, it's a bit deeper, the dial, so it reflects light more. It does feel remarkably solid. If it was unbranded and you removed all the branding and I didn't know what this was, it's difficult to knock it, especially at the price. The weight is about 86 grams on the NATO strap. On the full bracelet, it comes out to, I think, about 165 grams, which is, you know, pretty average of watches of this size and scale. The lugs are a little bit longer than your typical Submariner, so I think actually this would be more suited towards medium to larger rather than smaller wrists. Let's take it off the wrist and sum up its positives and negatives. Let's start with the positives first. First of all, it's undeniable that it is great value for money. At half the price of the average fashion watch, you're getting a real automatic Japanese movement, and a really good one too. It's reliable, it's robust, it does exactly what it's supposed to do. Also, its design, it's tastefully done, and I think, you know, obviously that's got to do with the watch that it's heavily inspired by, but we'll get to that in the negatives. It's a very versatile watch. You can wear it with pretty much anything, but at the end of the day, it's a watch that you can go swimming with, you can go diving, you can really enjoy it for what it is. There are parts of it that do surprise me. I love the seconds hand, the counterbalance, the bezel action is impressive, the price is extremely competitive, and the finishing, the transitions, the sharpness of the edges. And this is the real kicker, it's performing admirably. I mean, beyond admirably. I think it's about +6. Now, of course, there is a bit of variation, but yeah, it performs. It does the job. And I think for the money you paid, it's incredible value for money. It punches way above its weight. However, there are some things that I don't like about it. So let's discuss some of the negatives. Well, first of all, the loom is a little bit disappointing. We don't have solid end links. There are QC issues or quality control issues. For example, the magnifier doesn't line up exactly. And I've heard that, you know, with a lot of Invictas, there's always something slightly off. That, unfortunately, is part and parcel of buying entry-level timepieces. They don't have the quality control of luxury watches, for example. You get what you pay for. Now, the biggest negative of this watch is undoubtedly its design. Its uncanny resemblance to the Submariner is unmistakable. I feel it is a bit of a missed opportunity. Had Invicta made some slight changes or just added a little bit more of an individual character of its own. I mean, just look at the Orient Ray or various Seiko 5 divers. They have their own little quirky characteristics. Some of them are very Submariner-esque, but at the same time, they have things that identify them as Seiko or as Orient. This plays a little bit too close to your standard Rolex sub. We got to remember that not everybody can afford a Rolex Submariner, and that's perfectly understandable. Some people, they just want to spend $100 on something, they get a little bit of that feeling. To me, I don't get offended by this, and I think if you are horrified by this watch, I think you're too easily offended. If you forget the name branding, if you forget what it says on the dial, it's not a bad watch at all. This goes into something else, the branding. Now, Invicta have an astonishing history. They were actually very respected watchmakers, and they were founded all the way back in 1837 in Le Chant-de-Fonds, in the, you know, the heartland of the Swiss watchmaking world. All the way up until that time, for you know, over a century, they were a family business owned by the Picard family, and then they were sold in 1991, and then the Invicta we all know and love today exists. Now, vintage Invicta is something very, very different. In fact, their classic watches, a lot of their vintage pieces are gorgeous, really stunning with their own personality. But Invicta has gone into a different direction, and unfortunately there is a stigma attached to the Invicta brand. It's almost become a kind of butt of joke, especially in serious watch collectors, which is a shame because it really shouldn't do. And Invicta does bring a lot of joy and happiness to a lot of people, and for many people it was a gateway watch. It was their first watch that brought them into the hobby, and I think any watch that does that is worthy of respect. However, they have that QVC shopping channel image that does not help. Their aggressive pricing policies. I mean, you could see when I unboxed this, it said $300 and something on the box, and then, well, we all know it doesn't cost that much. I think that ship has sailed. I mean, almost insulting marketing tactics. And not to mention the vast majority of the current Invicta line, which are these big oversized watches. Now, if you like that kind of thing, that's absolutely fine, each to their own. We cannot ignore the fact that it does bring negative connotations, and and a slightly, they're almost parodies of large watches. If you like that kind of thing, that's absolutely fine, but in my opinion, and it very much is based on taste, they drag the brand down because everybody then associates the brand with those kind of timepieces. Loud, gaudy, very subjective to fashion, just screams, look at me, and getting away from the roots of the brand, which were making exquisite timepieces. And I'll be sure to share some images. It's all to do with branding and perception, not anything to do with this watch. Now, yes, it does take a lot from the Submariner aesthetic. And while it is an advantage if you're trying to pair it with straps, it's a missed opportunity. Invicta could have done something amazing here. They achieved all of this for less than $100, and at least it's not as stylistically aggressive as some of their bigger pieces. So a difficult watch to talk about and a difficult watch to review. I've enjoyed my time with it. I'm glad I had it in. If you want to get that Submariner feel but without breaking the bank, this is a good way to go. Personally, I would choose a Seiko 5 or an Orient over this, mainly to do with I feel that they are more original. But again, who cares? It's your watch. If this does it for you, if this brings you happiness, I say wear it with pride. It's a great little watch. Amazing value for money. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much it. So let's take it back to the studio. So let's move on now to something completely different. Another entry-level watch, but from a brand with a fantastic, rich horological history, still going to this day, and I think a brand that are doing it right, in this day and age, especially their new designs. So let's have a first look at this Timex. I've already removed the outer box because, I mean, you don't want to watch me cutting into cardboard boxes. However, I haven't opened this, so this will be my first initial impressions. Inside here is a brand new Timex. Somebody shared it, and I apologize, I forget who it was, in the Facebook group, in the UGWC, and I was so impressed with the design of this, I just bought it. It was an impulse buy, not terribly expensive. I'm a big fan of Timex. I love their vintage stuff. Not really familiar with their newest stuff, so I thought, yeah, why not? It's really cool design, and I got to say, it's something that Timex are doing very, very well. Interestingly, the box was made in Italy, which is pretty cool. Anyway, let's open her up. So we remove the outer packaging. There we go. Oh, very nice little presentation box. How does this open? Okay. Remove the elastic. I love the grey. Really nice packaging. Unpretentious, simple, tastefully done. Drum roll, please. Oh, there we go. There we go. Wow. Look at that. Is it going? Or you pulled that out, I presume. Pop it in. There you go, and there off it goes. Look at that. Very handsome. What really grabbed me about this was the hour hand. The way, as it passes around the dial, it highlights the 24-hour time. Now this is the, what is this called? Is there any literature? Oh, here we go. Very cool. Very simple, unpretentious. There we go. The glow. So this is the Navigator Harbor. There we go. Look at that dial, very military inspired, obviously. And, you know, Timex's designs are just spot on at the moment, really spot on. I think it costs about 135. So it's bi-directional. We have 12 hours, so you can keep track of 2 time zones. Obviously, Navigator, it's a, you know, flight, I guess, pilot-inspired watch. Very, very cool. Look at that. Unusual finishing. It's got a kind of faux scratching, I guess, to make it feel vintage. Interesting. I've never seen that before. Love the bezel insert. Love the colors. A really nice size. Let's pop it on the wrist. So there we go. Now, I'm not fond of this strap. It's a little bit scratchy, I guess, but I love that matted dial. Also the balance. There's no date. It's where's it made? It doesn't say. It just says archive, 100 meters watered. It's a really cracking little watch. I love it. Unpretentious, very military. I've never seen this finishing before. It's a faux scratched finish. I wonder how they achieved that, and they probably got a wire brush or something. Very cool. It looks like it's been in the wars, and it needs to be. It's a shame this is not an automatic. Timex used to make such cracking automatic movements. If this had an automatic movement, it would be to die for. It really would. I mean, gorgeous. Very retro inspired, but with its own little personality. I love it. I can't wait to put this on a different... I'm not a fan of this strap, I can tell you right now. Let's actually take it off. It's too thick, scratchy. Interestingly, it's a 18mm, so if I hold on one second. So it's a 40mm watch, which is great. You see, even Timex understand that sizes are going a little bit more traditional. Fantastic. Now, look at that. That is the business. Oh, look at the balance. I wonder what the lume's like. That's just on a few minutes exposure. Very cool little watch. Let's put the lights back on. Anyway guys, hopefully I'll follow up with a review from the new archive range of Timex. Very cool indeed. Anyway guys, let's take you back to the studio. I'm going to leave it there. Please don't forget to add your thoughts, queries, comments, opinions, all the rest of it down below. Thank you very, very much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and found it useful. And as always guys, I will catch you in the next one. Okay, ciao.